Hi, everyone. We're going to let folks trickle in and we'll get started in just a few. Yes, happy Lunar New Year, everybody. Thanks, Chow. Hey, Anna. All right, I think it's 5:32. Folks are still coming in, but I think we'll kick things off. Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us for VMFA Fridays After 5, a taste of art presented by Chase, and thank you to Chase. Tonight, we're really excited to feature Longevity Winery. Our guests tonight, Phil Long, Liz Skirpin, and myself, and we'll get into deeper introductions in just a few. Again, really appreciate you joining us on what is a cold and snowy and possibly freeze rainy evening here in Richmond. Very different than what's happening in California. So before we get started, if you've been here before, or if you haven't been here before, it's always good to go over how this works. So we're in a Zoom webinar, which means that you can see us. We cannot see you. Use that to your advantage as you wish. We're going to be really focusing on the chat to communicate with panelists, and that's at the bottom of your screen. So if you have a comment or a question or just want to say hi, go ahead and pop it into the chat and we'll monitor that as we go. So feel free to do that as we're presenting, talking, if you have a question, and we'll do our best to get to that. We are going to ask for your impressions of the wine and the impressions of the art. So really feel free, if you're comfortable, to communicate that way. And if you're pairing wine with tonight's program, we'd encourage you to go ahead and open your bottles now, and we'll do those reminders as we go as well. So first thing I'm going to do is actually turn it over to my colleague Liz, who is the Amuse General Manager, and she's going to introduce our very special guest for this evening.
Yes, welcome everybody, and I'm very excited to welcome our first winemaker to our Taste of Art series. I'd also like to give a big thank you to Ryan Larson with Republic National Distributing Company for facilitating this tasting, as well as Cheryl Zimmo and Tracy McPherson from Bronco Wine Company for hooking us up with Phil this evening. And I'm very pleased to introduce Phil Long. He is the founder and the winemaker of Longevity Wines out of Livermore, California, as well as being the president of the Association of African American Vintners. So welcome, Phil. Thank you very much for joining us, and I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Liz and Celeste and Ryan and Kristen. Thank you, all you guys, for having me here. I'm really exciting. Tonight's going to be a great night. Great wine, great food pairings, and great art. So I'm here to tell you a little bit more about Longevity Wines. Next slide. So Longevity Wines is located in the Livermore Valley. We're about 40 miles east of San Francisco. It's really a cool and quaint little valley. We reside with other wineries like Wente, Concannon. Stephen Mirasu has his winery here. And it's really it's a great place to be. The interesting thing when Napa won the Paris blind tasting in 1976, there was actually media involved back then just because of the age and the time and the date, but we actually won it long before Napa did in 1889. We didn't get much media, but we're still here and we're still making great wine. Next slide. So here's a little bit about the story of longevity. My wife, Deborah, and I, when we lived in Southern California, winery was, for the most part, it's a commodity in Southern California, something you have at a restaurant or buy at a store. But when we relocated to Northern California, wine is literally part of the fabric of life. And you cannot drive in any direction whatsoever without ending up in wine country. And as we inevitably got out to explore our new surroundings, because I'd lived in Southern California my entire life, we'd end up in wine country. And that passion continued to grow. And we decided, well, you know, what the heck, let's make a little wine in the garage and see if it's drinkable. Well, that was back in 2003. 2008, we opened our own commercial facility in the Livermore Valley. By 2018, we were voted Livermore Valley's Winery of the Year. So we've come a long way. All of you, not all of you, I hope all of you have the bottles, but if you look at the heart on the bottle, that heart was inspired by the hearts I would give Deborah for Valentine's Day. So those hearts down in that picture, she amassed a collection of hundreds and hundreds of hearts over time. And everything about her life became hearts, heart jewelry, heart rocks on the beach, heart whatever. So in 2009, when we rebranded, I designed the heart that's now on the label that contains more hearts, grapevines and grapes, because it really truly represented who Deborah and I were. And that has become the iconic label that is Longevity. Unfortunately, in May of 2016, Deborah was diagnosed with stage 4 pancreatic cancer. We lost Deborah in January of 2019, but before she left us, I made sure I took her with me to see that I got this, which is the heart on my arm. So she knows she's always going to be with me. She's always going to be part of this journey, and she's always going to be 50% of the brand no matter what. Next slide. So it's kind of been an incredible journey. We have partnered with one of the largest wine companies in the country, Bronco Wine Company. And at the beginning of 2020, the narrative was minority brand partners with large behemoth in the industry. And that's what the narrative started to be at the beginning of the year. It sort of morphed, obviously, in June with current events. But we have had literally over 200 million media impressions since last March. And we are the most talked about brand in the country. And I was even nominated for a Wine Enthusiast Magazine Wine Star Award for Social Visionary of the Year. And it's been an incredible ride. I'm sure you've seen a few of these periodicals here and there. And we're just trying to do our thing and make great wine, and hopefully people like you enjoy it. Next slide. So as the media continues to grow, this week we were actually put on Oprah's her O list for Valentine's Day. We were the #3 item on her O list, and it's funny. I just got off the phone a few minutes ago with a restaurant in Livermore that said they're going to do a special through Valentine's weekend. And the special is, we picked it first, which is sort of interesting. So it's quite an honor to be on Oprah's list with one of the wines we're going to be tasting tonight. Next slide. The cool thing is, if you've opened the bottles, talk a little bit about the cork. The cork closure, you probably haven't seen it before. It's known as a Helix Closure. It is a joint venture between Amram Cork Company and Owens, Illinois. Owens, Illinois manufactures the glass. As you see, it has threads on the inside of the bottle, and those threads mold to the cork over a 21-day period after the cork is inserted. And if you've opened your bottles, you'll see you can actually twist it out, and you can actually twist it back if you don't drink all the wine. the cool thing is it's 100% recyclable. It's 100% TCA free. It's 100% renewable. And it's a great closure that you're going to be seeing a lot more of. Next slide. Long before Deborah and I had the partnership with Bronco, we were trying to reach for a broader audience than our region would allow. So in each one of these national TV shows, you can see our wines are on set in the shot. I know it's hard to see in Big Bang Theory, it's right there to the right of Penny's head. But my favorite has to be Reese Witherspoon and the whole group of Big Little Lies sitting around the table, literally talking about how great the Chardonnay is. Next slide. So now's the time, if you have, excuse me, if you haven't poured any of the Chardonnay, I'm going to talk a little bit about the Chardonnay. It's time to pour, it's time to swirl, it's time to sniff, and it's time to sip. Just a little bit about my winemaking style. For me, every single varietal of wine has its own set of characteristics that you're trying to achieve balance in. And for Chardonnay, it's a balance of butter, oak, fruit, acidity, and one can't overpower another. So the first vintage of the Chardonnay, which we sold out, now we're on the 19, I blended in a little Viognier to offset that. And then the current vintage, I've blended in a little Sauv Blanc and Pinot Grigio just to offset that that harshness that oak can be. Not too much butter, a little bit on the back end, but it's a really enjoyable Chardonnay as Chardonnays go. I personally handed these wines we're tasting tonight to Jim Gordon of Wine Enthusiast magazine. And the Chardonnay was awarded 88 points, which for a California appellated Chardonnay is actually pretty good. It actually rates along the same lines of Chardonnays that cost $35, $42 and up. So I'm really proud of the Chardonnay. It's a really easy drinking Chardonnay, bright fruit, fresh acidity. But what I think about it really doesn't matter. It's what you think about it that matters. Next slide.
This is me. So I agree absolutely with the classic Chardonnay of a little bit of butter and a little bit of toasty oak, but I love the brightness that you get from it too. And I think that that acidity is crucial for food pairing as well. I think it's a wonderful additive. So we did our crab cakes, which are pretty much one of our most well-known dishes, but I thought that the richness of the crab goes really well with the creamy mouthfeel of the Chardonnay, but that acidity too goes nice with the seafood. So it has a red pepper jam and Greg's delicious greens that are amazing. And I think it's like his grandmother's recipe and some Carolina rice. So yeah, I do think that it's a great pairing. And Tracy McPherson says she loves its awesome balance. I agree, Tracy. It is a very well balanced Chardonnay. Does anyone else have any comments on the wine that they would like to share? I think it is fabulous. I could see why Oprah likes it.
I'm really liking it's very smooth, Phil. I like it, just like you said, it's that drinkability factor, but it just, I don't know, it's I get very textural when I talk about wine. And my husband's in the wine business, and that's kind of always my first comment, like is texture. And then I go into like fruit and smell, but it just is a very smooth drink.
Well, our competition in the market is Wente's Riva Ranch, is Josh. It's a lot of Chardonnays that people drink daily, and we think this one stands up to them and probably at or less of a price point.
Yeah, I can see it going with lots of foods. Whenever I try to pick a wine to have with dinner or to share with something, I want it to be balanced like this, and nothing that's going to hit too much of any note to take away from the food, but also something that I could drink on its own that has enough of its personality to stand on its own, and this definitely does. So it's delicious.
Yeah,
And for those-
Ryan says easy to pour another glass or two.
And for those of you that may actually be eating crab cakes at this time or not, when you do, we enter a lot of food and wine pairing competitions and do quite well. But the proper way to sample wine and food together is to take a sip of the wine, let it coat your mouth, a bite of the food, and then another sip of the wine. And that's how you know whether they're paired together or not. They should each bring something to the table, to the show, and they should complement each other very well. And I'm sure Liz has more she can say on that, but
Oh yeah, and it works. We did that. Every time I do a pairing, we all sit down and taste the wine and taste the food, and it's a group activity with all the staff, the kitchen staff and the front of the house staff. So yeah, these are all our choices. They're not just my picking. So Douglas has a question. He would like to know, are your grapes estate grown?
So to answer the national call, these wines are distributed nationally. We have the potential of bottling 100,000, 500,000, or 1 million cases a year if need be. Yeah, that's a little more than I can handle as far as growing fruit. So I'm actually using Franzia family fruit. And the Franzia family owns more vineyard land acres in California than exist in the entire state of Oregon.
Thank you. And Anna says, I love a Chardonnay that drinks so well and makes my chicken stew sublime. So I think chicken stew would go great with this Chardonnay too.
I think chicken stew would go great as well. Is it tomato based? What's the base of the chicken stew?
She means it.
Not
Not tomato.
Well, I'm sure it is sublime, just like you said.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, did she say in the stew?
In the stew.
Oh, she likes to cook with wine, and sometimes some of the wine gets in the food. Is that?
The Julia Child way.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I think crab cakes are a perfect pairing for this. Crab, the little bit of just the richness and the butteriness of crab is always going to go well with Chardonnay.
It does. The pepper jam is really sweet. So he's from Eastern North Carolina. So it's got a good low country feel to it. So the pepper jam is really sweet, but I think that goes nice with the acidity in this wine, because when you're pairing food, you can either go for something that hits the same note kind of, or something that complements each other. And I think this wine really does complement the sweetness of the pepper relish really well too with the acidity. So.
Well, I'm going to ask for the recipe in the end, so just don't forget.
He'll give it to you.
Well, and Phil, post pandemic, you're just going to have to make a trip out to Richmond.
Yes, I am. Yeah, definitely post pandemic. I was scheduled to be in pretty much every state in 2020, but obviously that did not happen.
Well, you'll always have a seat at Amuse. So.
Oh, well, thank you.
Yeah.
William, yes, crab cakes are on the Amuse menu. We never take them off. When we did, people rioted, so they are there. Tracy wants to know where you're from, Phil. Originally.
Phil was born in Washington, D.C.
You're like us.
just down the road. People are saying, I've had people say, do you mean actually in Washington, D.C.? Yes, in Washington, D.C. I know it's just 10 miles square, but yes, that's where I was born originally.
What brought you out to California?
Nursery school.
Oh, okay. That's a good reason.
I didn't have much choice. Who is your winemaker? I am the winemaker. I am the winemaker for the winery. I've been the winemaker for the winery from day one. About 5 years ago, my son joined us. He is the assistant winemaker, and he's come quite a long ways. I'm I'm very proud of him. He's able to schedule a crew, run the crew, crush press, and I don't have to be there, so I can spend time with great people like you.
That's awesome.
How did you learn the craft? You know, I didn't. So I have a degree in architecture, as Anna knows. And, you know, back in college, wine, it really wasn't on the radar. It was just something that you thought was made in France. I did not know this was even a career opportunity. So it wasn't until I started, you know, as an adult, learning to enjoy wine, that the love of wine became a part. And it really did start with just Deborah and I starting to make wine in the garage, having a lot of mentors, asking a lot of questions, and making a lot of mistakes. The biggest thing about learning something like this is you don't know what you don't know. But that's okay. We got it to a point where, I mean, even Deborah would say, "Are you sure it's good enough that people will buy it?" I'm like, "I don't know. I guess we'll see." So, you know, long story short, I take everything seriously that I do. I try to perfect my craft, and the minute you think you know it all, it's time to stop. So I'm continuously learning and learning on a regional level at a 3,500, you know, case facility a year level, and now learning at a 1,000,000 case facility level. It's an entirely different animal. So I'm still learning. I'm not done. Just getting started, actually.
So a lot of good questions coming in. You've answered some of them actually, just in what you just said. Guess more about the operations there at Longevity. Do you have a tasting room, and do you have any food on site?
So we do have a tasting room. You know, we had to close the tasting room the second week, I believe, in March of 2020. And we were forced to do basically, you know, drive by, throw the bottles at the cars they drive by for quite some time. We reopened Labor Day weekend in September, and the first weekend outside tasting only, we opened. It was 112 degrees both days. And the next weekend there was so much smoke you couldn't breathe. But we persevered and continued to be open until we were closed down again in December. And I think this is our second or third weekend being open now this year. Outdoor tasting only. It is Valentine's Day, obviously, this weekend. And as my GM just texted me, we are booked solid both days. So yes, there's a tasting room. Yes, we're hoping to get back to normalcy at some point. Yeah, normally there's a lot of things going on. As far as food, right where we are in the Livermore Valley, there are several entities around us. There are about 4 wineries right in a row. Altamont Brewery is right behind us. There's another winery across the street, and there's a speakeasy lounge next to them. And normally, there are a slew of food trucks around what we call our area, the Block East End, and they come, and there's always some kind of food there. It's been a little sketchy right now, just obviously for obvious reasons, but I'm sure once we get through this COVID issue that they'll all be back. Mention the amount of cases you can produce, how you see it. So here's the thing. We have 2 colored labels. The classic label is what we're tasting tonight, and those are distributed nationally by RNDC. Thank you, Tracy. RNDC and a few other distributors in other states. And those wines I produce at Bronco. I literally go to their facility, and there is no limit to how much can be produced. In the Napa Valley bottling location, I believe they can bottle 280,000 cases a day. So we have no limits on what we can do. At my facility, we've been hovering around the 3,500 case range for some time, and I don't really see increasing that. We're going to stick there. We've got a few full-time employees. The rest are part-time, and we're up to about 12 in total. But I could not do what I do without certain people in my life, my GM, Sheena, my tasting room manager, Sarah, my publicist, Tammy. Without them, I'd kind of be lost. And just FYI, 80% of my staff are female. I'm the rarity actually in the organization. Do you have any fear of Livermore radiation? Well, truth be told, we are actually right across the street from the Livermore lab. I seem to be okay so far. I don't know how else to answer it. I haven't had a fear. What I've been told, because we have a lot of customers from the lab, is any of the radiation that's across the street is, as some lab worker told me once, it's sandwich radiation. In other words, it's stuff you could put on a sandwich and it still wouldn't harm you. It's very low grade radiation. So I just haven't had that fear, but if it changes, I'll let you know.
Well, on that note, let's go look at some art.
Radiation. Okay.
Not a smooth segue, but I'm trying. Learning more about longevity and Phil's story and how much the heart motif means to you and meant to Deborah. That's what I was really interested in exploring a little bit more with some of the art selections that we're going to take a look at today. And it being Valentine's Day, it seemed like a good time to do that as well. So the first piece we're going to look at is this vase by artist Archibald Knox from our decorative arts collection. So this is on view now. So you can, come have a glass of Chardonnay and then stroll right across from Amuse into the decorative arts gallery to see this piece. It's a one of a kind piece. Haven't seen anything else like this. And Archibald Knox was actually born on the Isle of Man. Spent time growing up there, went to art school and taught art, also designed for Liberty and Company, really well-known company out of London. And you can see some of the markings just to the right of the heart is the Liberty and Co. mark. And the heart motif on this vase is very central to the vase. It's enamel heart. So he wouldn't have actually fabricated this work. So he is the designer behind this, and the fabricator would have been the Hassler Limited Company out of Birmingham. And then they produced for Liberty and Company. So sort of artist designed, manufactured, and then sold, retailed by Liberty and Company. Yes, it is silver. And then the stones at the bottom are chrysoprase stones. So there are three, the two in the front and the one in the back, sort of a tripod base. And then I just put a detail of the heart on the right, just to bring attention to the Celtic knot that overlays the heart. And this is really indicative of Knox's style and what his influences are. So this is Mr. Knox here, circa 1900. The vase we were just looking at is about 1903. And to the right is a Celtic cross that is found in a graveyard on the Isle of Man. And these are probably from, the Viking period. And Manx, the Isle of Man, or Manx crosses, they're really well known for that. So he would go and sketch these and really be inspired by these crosses. So you can see sort of the overlay of a Celtic knot in this example. And then he's just kind of extrapolating that idea for the heart. Just a couple other pieces by Knox. On the left is a belt buckle. We have 400 belt buckles at the museum, fun fact, from a collector. And a lot of these, about, I'd say like 12 are by Knox for Liberty. And I just wanted you all to get a sense of kind of the other kinds of motifs he was working with. But a lot of times this interlocking kind of design is really, really something he comes back to and again. This is more of kind of a botanic motif, almost like a rose. And then on the right is not in our collection, unfortunately. It's a private collection, just sold actually. And it has hearts within it as well. So this is, again, something that pops up with Knox quite frequently. Coming back to the heart on this vase and that interlocking motif, just to the right is sort of a standard Celtic knot called the lover's knot. And you can see that it is a heart shape. So two hearts sort of intertwined with one another. That really mimics what, let me see if I can do a little, I don't know if you all can see me drawing here. No, I don't, there. That kind of mimics this heart shape. So I think definitely something that he was, I hope I can get that off. Woo. Oh no. All right, let's advance. Let's make sure that, okay, great. The other one, Knox as a teacher was really also known for these sayings that he would convey to his students, or sort of mantras or mottos that he would share. And one of them that I really love is, art is in everything if we choose to put it there. And that to me really speaks also to this next piece by Roy DeCarva of a couple dancing. Roy DeCarva was part of the Kamwenge group, which was a group of African American photographers working in the 1960s who formed a collective to support one another and raise their work to the attention of really the world, and which they really weren't getting, because they were African American. So they worked together, they published together, they supported one another. Kamwenge is a term translated that means working together. And Roy, as one of these artists, was really interested in capturing moments that were about the moment, but not necessarily about revealing who was behind the moment. So we don't see the couple's faces in this picture as much as it's centering on the way they are interlocked together, much like that knot, that Celtic knot that we saw in the work by Knox. And this idea, this lover's knot, that is really about being intertwined as one. And that's a feeling I get from this photograph that really focuses on the embrace of the couple who are dancing. And I mentioned Roy, and I always like to show a picture of the artist if we have it. And because of the Louis Draper archive, and I'll talk about the archive a little bit later on, we have this great photograph of Roy on the right here, kind of in mid conversation at the Studio Museum in New York. And on the right, another example of his work, again, this kind of moment in time. So kind of finding art and beauty in the everyday. This is on the street, and just like that one glimpse of a man with a portfolio who maybe is standing waiting to either cross the street or moving along. And again, we don't see his face or who he is, but it's more about, again, sort of the composition and that moment in time. And then a photo, and I'm sorry, this is a little bit grainy, of the Kamwenge group. Very famous photograph, group portrait taken in 1973 and printed in 2019 by Anthony Barboza. And in the middle there is Louis Draper, kind of the man with the scarf with his arms folded in front of him, who we'll meet a little bit later. And again, as I mentioned, this group was formed to really raise the profile of the photographers pictured here. And the museum was really so fortunate. I'm just really proud of the museum and Dr. Sarah Eckhart, our curator. We mounted one of the first, really the first retrospective of the Kamwenge group, and an exhibition that closed in October. It's now at the Whitney Museum, and then we'll go on to the Getty Museum. That exhibition is completely online. You can access that on our website to find more of these amazing photographs by this really important group of artists who now hopefully will get the recognition that they definitely deserve. And Anna said, couple dancing, beautiful imagery, the figures emerging and receding from the light. Yes. And DeCarva loved that play of light and shadow. And that's a really, really a piece, again, like the Knox piece, when we look at that Celtic knot, that was Knox. And that kind of play of light and dark is definitely DeCarva. So really, I guess, just key pieces for both of those artists. Yes, this was an awesome exhibition. Thank you, Sue. It was amazing. And I'm just so glad that you can still see it online. And so this kind of collective, a group raising the profile of African American and the Americans in the field of photography really struck a note with me, Phil, and the work that you are doing and the Association of African American Vintners are doing. So I'd love for you to talk about that organization and what you all are doing to increase diversity within the field.
Thank you. I'm going to go back to Anna asked on the vase, is it enamel on silver?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you.
So yeah, thank you. You know, this whole journey, the Association of African American Vintners was founded by Mac McDonald. He's the gentleman next to me in the picture there. He founded it in 2002. He was recognized as this great winemaker, not because he was a black winemaker. He was making 95-point Pinots in Sonoma, and that's how he got his recognition. And as he started to get out and pour and get into the more and more into the industry, I think his quote is, "I started noticing that people didn't look like me." So he formed just a handful of African American winemakers, the Association of African American Vintners. I met Mac around 2010, 2011 for the first time. I, of course, knew who he was because he's in every magazine and newspaper you could ever imagine. And he had heard of me, and I didn't know it at the time, but he was actually grooming me to become his replacement. And sometime in 2018, I became vice president of AAAV, and in the beginning of 2020, of all years, to become president of AAAV. I went from just a guy who was trying to, improve the organization, grow membership, and just improve our overall efforts to pave the path for young African American winemakers. But the year we had, I can't take credit. The organization grew by at least 500%, and the donations and funds that allowed us to create these scholarship funds grew by thousands of percent. And we have a lot of longtime contributors now, which are really, really great to have. We're in conjunction with Urban Connoisseurs. We now have the Black Winemaker Scholarship Fund with the United Negro College Fund. We have Sonoma State University Wine Business Program scholarships available, and the Napa Valley Wine Academy. We have WSETs 1 through 4 for sommelier scholarship courses. The cool thing is people like wine enthusiasts have partnered with us long term. We are media partners with them, so all of our webinars are produced by Wine Enthusiast Media now. JCB, the Jean-Charles Boisset collection, they have a wine called Unity, where half of the proceeds are donated to AAAV. John Legend's a member of AAAV, so we've seen a lot of growth in the last year. And we've got like basically 3 focuses. Number one, like I said earlier, I didn't even know this was a career path that was available. So trying to educate young African Americans or any people of color that this actually is a career path, and there are many, many factions within that industry or our industry that you can go down. So that's the first thing. And once you create that awareness, is paving the path. How do we help pave the path to funds to allow them to go down that road? And then the third is, at some point, I think the number was Black winemakers in this country are like 0.1%, which is basically zero. And just trying to create awareness around the fact that there are African American winemakers, there are really good African American winemakers, and there are really good African American made wines. So those are our points, and that's what I'm trying to do on a daily basis. I call it another full-time job with no pay, but I'm really happy to do it, and I'm getting a lot of gratification being there.
That's great. Thanks, Phil. And I mean, I'm really excited to learn more about this organization, and I think it mirrors kind of some of the initiatives that we have at the museum as well. I know for like a museum ed, for example, there's not a lot of diversity, so that's something I'm really focused on. Is again like paving that way. Like, how do we pave the way to let people know that this is an option, or that museum careers are an option. And I think Kamwenge did that as well. So I'm just really glad that to learn more and that you're here to talk about it. And I guess a question I know I had, like if someone wanted to contribute to some of these scholarship funds, can you do that through AA?
AAAV, yes.
AAAV?
Go to the AAA, it's aavintners.org. You can contribute, you can become a member, you can subscribe to our newsletter. Everything's there at the site. You can even support a number of wineries by buying their wine straight through the site. So there's a number of ways you can actually become involved.
Great. And Anna's asking, what Virginia winemakers do you know?
I know, and I can't remember his name. The very first winemaker in the country was from Virginia. I don't know any Virginia. There may be some in here. I'm not keen on the membership. That's my vice president. I'm sure he could produce you a list, which I will get you after the show.
That'd be great. Thanks. All right. Let's maybe go to our next selection, the Cab Sav.
So the Cabernet Sauvignon. So this is interesting. The goal is to try to make, again, a well-balanced wine, but at an entry-level price. You want to make it really, really approachable. So it's that balance of fruit and oak and tannins for Cabernet. And that's what people sort of shy away from with Cabernet Sauvignon, is that the tannins is just too big, it's too much. So I tried to produce more of a fruit-forward Cabernet Sauvignon than a very, very tannin-laden Cabernet Sauvignon. The first vintage, I blended in a little R&R Noah, which is a little-known Bordeaux varietal, which is a clone between Merlot and Petit Verdot. And then in the current vintage, which is what you guys have, the 18, I added some Ruby Red. But I think that overall, the goal was to make it approachable, fruity, smooth, not a whole lot of tannins where you're thinking I'm going to get a headache, and make it an enjoyable wine. So that was my goal. So again, you guys tell me. John June Lewis, thank you, Anna. That's who the winemaker was from Virginia, the very, very first African-American winemaker in this country. And in fact, I know this is being recorded. We were going to name the scholarship the John June Lewis Senior Scholarship Fund, but the family, let's just say it didn't work out. So we moved away from that. So anyway, so you guys tell me, what do you think of the Cab?
Birch has his comment: the Cabernet is well balanced with nice tannins and should go with any dish. for the price, a real treat. I plan to have it with a plate of fettuccine Alfredo for dinner. That sounds fabulous.
Okay. I'm sure Liz has the perfect pairing that she's come up with.
I went pretty classic with my pairing. We did steak. This is hanger steak. And it has a ricotta gnudi, which is the kind of pasty looking blob, which is basically a ricotta pasta, and sweet walnuts on the side that are kind of like a smoky sweet walnut, and fennel, which is the green sauce made from the bulb and the frond. So I kind of went with this. I did pick up on the fruit flavors, and it has some like deep cherry notes to it, I think, that go really, really well. And it also has kind of a really savory quality at the end of it, like cocoa-y, and like I think that goes really nice with red meat and anything that's grilled. So to go with that, the walnuts were also really nice, so it gave that little toasty quality to it. And it's a very classic pairing, but it works very well with a wine like this. So that is what we went with in the restaurant.
Well, steak for me and cab. Yeah, I don't know that there's any way to go wrong. You can go one way, you go steak and cab, or you can go chocolate and cab. So Valentine's Day, remember that.
We thought about doing chocolate. We didn't have anything to photograph yet because we're doing a bunch of chocolate desserts for Valentine's Day, but they baked them day before. So they didn't have them ready yet, but we all talked about it, how it would go really well with, like, we're doing classic chocolate molten cake for two and things like that. It'd be perfect. I would totally have a bottle of this and a molten chocolate cake. It'd be very good.
Yeah, I lean toward the steak because I don't eat a lot of sweets. Just me. But I dry age my own beef. So I'm always going to lean toward the steak with the cab for sure.
There's a reason why it's a classic combination. It works. Anna says it's lovely. It has the tannins to lean toward the dry rather than the sweet. I'm having it with a really sharp cheddar cheese. Steak tomorrow night. Perfect.
Oh, perfect. What steak? No, I think it's a great pairing. I guess I'll just have to get on a plane and come out and
visit us.
Yeah, come on. I feel like it is so smoky smelling to me in a good way. Like cherries, and like a, I don't know, like a bonfire.
Yeah, I do think it has a toasty quality to it, kind of, and that's kind of what I got from it. Ooh, Tracy with tri-tip. That sounds perfect.
And Anna said a cheap sirloin, but the wine.
Yeah, Anna says a cheap sirloin. You know, it's what you do with it. It's not necessarily the cut.
Mm-hmm. Anna's cooking some good stuff. Like chicken stew. Oh, this.
I just had an avocado for lunch.
Okay. I had scrambled eggs, so. Well, as we're tasting this cab, we're gonna I approve of both your lunches. Thanks, Anna. So mentioning Valentine's Day, coming back to our heart motif, this really petite, delicate work from our European collection. It's a comb from the 15th century, a French piece, boxwood, bone, and silk. So in great condition, just the fact that all the comb teeth are still there, and would have been probably a token given to like in honor of an engagement or a wedding between bride and groom. Hard to see at the middle there, and on the back side is a carving, an inscription, and I'm gonna try to dig out my high school French here. We'll see if this works. Vive celle que l'aime. So I'm just going to translate it and pretend I didn't say that. Life to her whom I love. So probably given, by the husband to be to the wife to be, again, as a token. And you can see in the middle there, there's a heart on the bottom left. And there's a hand holding an arrow that's about to pierce the heart. So this kind of motif here of a arrow through the heart is something, and then the heart shape that you're seeing there, it wasn't always a the heart shape that we've come to know or that is even here. And kind of in looking back where that first kind of appears, at least in Western art, is in this work, an illustration from the Romance of Alexander. This is from the Bodleian Library in Oxford, called the Heart Offering. So 14th century, about 100 years before the comb we were just looking at, French. So in France first appears, and you see this woman holding the heart shape. So this sort of the kind of cleft in the middle of this object. And on the right is the man who's given it to her, and he's pointing to his chest, so kind of indicating where it's come from. And Anna, yes, it's a little more literal, like an anatomical heart, yes, but this kind of that divot kind of above is sort of where we see this sort of what we know now as or associate with Valentine's Day and the heart shape. So definitely started in France. Also, this kind of this idea of giving your heart to somebody and kind of true love and everlasting love kind of came from like a kind of a minstrel sort of song in the French court, that perpetuated this idea of a symbol of love, a heart for a symbol of love. And of course, the arrow and heart persists as sort of an icon of Valentine's Day. And I just grabbed a couple of vintage cards to reference that. On the left, probably turn of the century, To My Valentine. And again, we see that arrow like we saw on the comb piercing the heart, like Cupid's arrow. And of course, this 1960s version over here with Cupid himself piercing the heart. And of course, Cupid, son of Venus, carries the arrows, and Venus instructs who he should shoot to fall in love. And of course, that arrow has to go right through the heart to make them fall in love with one another. And this you'll see this everywhere still, of course. And the work that we'll look at from another work from the collection that just links this comb from the 15th century France to the streets of New York. And again, coming back to the Comoingue group, this image of a graffiti heart with arrow through it from 1975 by Louis Draper. And it's taken on the streets of New York where he was living at the time. After he had grew up in Richmond, he left and went to New York to actually pursue writing, but became really interested in photography and started shooting pictures. And then again, just sort of taught himself, and then went to school for it, took more classes in it, and then really became recognized as a leader in the field, and again, mentoring other photographers. And actually, the Comoingue group started a mentorship program at a school to teach students how to do photography, how to do art. And again, it like paving that way, laying the groundwork. And this is Lou on the left. We saw a picture of him earlier in Comoingue. This is by Anthony Barboza, portrait of him. And another example of his work, and again, talking with the curator, Sarah Eckhart, she said that the graffiti heart was really, again, very typical Lou. Kind of that play or the happenstance on graffiti or wall art in the neighborhood, and making compositions based on that, or kind of the play of words. So in this example, it's a bulletin board that says "Grow Rich," and juxtaposed with graffiti, and then kids walking along right under it. Kind of, will they? Is it possible? Just really playing on those words, and that was something that Lou was really interested in. The image that we just looked at, this heart image, it says India. So you want to like create this story. Who's India? Who's like in love with her? This really abstracted arrow is going through, and we see the branch at the top mimicking like that trajectory of the arrow. It's a really cool composition, and I think again speaks to Lou's skill at really finding these moments and capturing them and framing them just so, again, kind of like what Knox was saying, art is in everything if we choose to make it so. And I just feel like, with photography, it really gives you the opportunity to do that. So this piece actually is from the archive I mentioned before. And when I showed Sarah Eckhart this, she said, "Oh my gosh, I've never seen that. I can't believe you found that." And it's because there are over, 3,000 objects in the archive. And so there's always something new to see or discover or find. So again, the archive, and I just took a shot of the archive from our website. So you can, when you go to the website, go under collections, you can see collections right at the top. And right next to it says research, and there's a drop down that says archive. You just click on that. It can take you to the Louis Draper archive, and you can search and view the entire archive. It's completely digitized. And just, I mean, you can spend a lot of time on there just exploring contact sheets, prints like the heart that I just showed you, images. His cameras are in the archive. His notebooks from when he taught at SUNY college, and really thought of him. That's what he took a lot of pride and joy in. I mean, you can get his syllabi. I mean, it's amazing for an educator to just go through from that example. So I really encourage you, if you're interested in Kamwenge and Louis Draper as a son of Richmond, and the leader of this group, to really dig deep and dive deep and investigate that. Again, all free and accessible on our website. So I think we're actually, yeah, almost at time. But if any, again, we have a few minutes if people wanted to ask any more questions of Phil, or we're happy to answer questions about the art or Amuse, or any more impressions as this wine is opening up and you're taking a few more sips. Happy to hear.
What are the pairings? Liz is here.
Casey wants to know if there's a wine club.
So, yeah, so we do have, again, distinguishing between the two labels, we've got our reserve wines that we produce in the Livermore Valley, and the national wines I produce at Bronco. For the reserve wines, our black label wines, we do have a wine club. The wines are available on our website, and we do have a wine club you can sign up for on the website. In addition, if you're in a place where you'd like to know where you can find the national wines, there is a Find Our Wine tab, and literally you just put in your zip code and it'll tell you all the stores that are around you that have the wine.
And I know that some of you may have tried to get bottles today and the museum was closed. We do have a good amount in Amuse and Best, and we're going to sell it by the glass there in both and feature it. So if you didn't get a chance to pick up a bottle, you can either come and have a bottle or buy a glass or take a bottle with you. I will have it in, just ask for it.
And this is an interesting thing. You don't normally hear this, but I tell people I'm still just Phil. I'm really accessible. I'm just a guy who makes wine. If anybody wants to reach out, I know this is my publicist says I got to stop, but I haven't stopped yet. My email is just phil@longevitywines.com. So if anybody wants to reach out or have any questions or want to know more, just reach out, phil@longevitywines.com.
Well, we will, there's one more question if we have time for it, Phil. Kind of what do you see for the future of the industry and longevity wines?
Well, for the industry, I'm tasked with, which I would do anyway, trying to create a bowl of jelly beans of people who make wine that look like the bowl of jelly beans of people who drink wine. That's what I'm trying to do. There's no reason they should be different. Yep. So as far as longevity wines, I think my primary goal is to honor Deborah's memory first and foremost. And then beyond that is to set things right for the next several generations, because this isn't going away. you know, I've got, between Deborah and I, we've got 6 grandkids. So it's just trying to set things up that this is a long lasting, kind of ties into longevity entity. So those are my goals at this point.
Great. Well, thank you for all you're doing for the industry and for making great wine for us to taste today, and for your time and, you know, zooming in from California and spending an hour with us. We really, really appreciate it. And I want to thank everyone who registered and logged on and spent an hour with us, meeting Phil, chatting with Phil, learning about art, hearing from Liz. We're getting a lot of thank yous and great wine, Phil. Glad to have discovered your wines, and great chat, lovely wines. So I think you've definitely created some fans in Virginia. This was awesome. Thanks, Tracy. And if you would like to all join us for our next Taste of Art program. Oh, and so, Melissa, phenomenal me time. Yes, Melissa, thank you. You deserve it, Melissa. Come back on the 26th and have more me time. We're going to be with Busky Cider, which is a Richmond-based cidery, actually just right down the street from the museum. And I think Scott's Edition. And then wine, right, Liz, on March 12th.
Yes,
That's a TBD. We'll let you guys know.
Well, I just want to say thank you to the VMFA. I want to say thank you to Chase, and I want to say thank you to all those attending. I really appreciate it. I'm honored to be here, and I hope to get out there sometime soon when it's safe. So with that, I'm gonna say cheers and hope to see you soon.
Cheers. Thanks, Phil. Cheers, everybody.
Thank you.
Have a great evening, and everyone in Richmond, please, or actually who's in the path of winter storm, please be safe. Have a good night, everybody.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Great to see you guys. Thank you.
Thanks, Phil.
Bye-bye.